Previously on Cycle 99. All aboard the Bannockburn. Higgs's attention was briefly caught by the gray-haired Captain Vogue. Then, above the two of them, the sharp chin and nose of Lena Spitz came into view. Higgs' first barely intelligible word was lightning, but the cold, clear water hit their damaged pupil like a lightning strike, and Thatch fell instantly unconscious. For Priya, Thatch had always told themselves. Ever since that pocket watch had come into their possession, it carried a history of doom and death in its wake. Higgs blanched, stomach churning at the thought, and blinked away the feeling of a metal pommel in his hand. Instead, Thatch ran their fingers over the face of the pocket watch, feeling how it had shattered. He imagined them like the particles of the Large Hadron Collider, all the way in Switzerland. Lena joined Higgs as he rushed to the starboard railing to watch Monty and another sky sailor throw off the mooring lines, setting the Bannockburn free, plummeting across space to what they suspected was a fabled lost island. While we wait, how about a peek into our previous tale? I'm sure I won't read it as well as Benoit. As Alaïs, je viens. Higgs turned to lean against the rigging and locked eyes with... who? Episode 5. Light. Cycle 99 is a swashbuckling adventure story about extinction magic and hope where you design the characters. Chapters release every Tuesday. Visit patreon.com/Pitchpine Productions for free to vote on chapter and character polls. This story is family-friendly, but may contain occasional strong language and mild violence. Welcome aboard the airship Bannockburn. It was not one, but two individuals who caught Higgs's eye across the deck of the Bannockburn, and their visages momentarily sent a cold shock down his spine, incongruous with the elation surrounding him. Marielle de Vogue hummed in tune with Bannockburn's engines, swaying at the helm as the ship danced through the wafting air currents in the age-old waltz of captain and vessel. Not even their delight, which Higgs could feel swelling within his own chest, could counter the sour dread that washed across his features, leaving a taste like rotten milk on his tongue. Higgs, Lena signed, his name a jagged zigzag that traveled from her nose to her shoulder, a name sign inspired by the sign for lightning. The man and woman, both older than Higgs and Lena, carried themselves like the cool professors whose classes Higgs always enjoyed the most. The man had half of his long, black hair pulled into a topknot, and the woman sported a bun held up by two jade hair sticks. As Higgs watched, both adults reached up at the same moment to brush errant strands from their faces with identical motions. People from the Tou family, Lena signed. Kelvin and Arden, I think. I don't know a lot about them, but Uncle Eddie has worked with another branch of the family before. These two are irrelevant. Aren't they? Higgs? Higgs immediately relaxed, shoulders drooping as the recognition faded. It was a passing, perhaps familial resemblance, and nothing more. With the shadows of his past once again carefully imprisoned deep in his psyche, the siblings' professorial air instead put Higgs in mind of his studies, which he sorely missed. Lottie had blazed through a dual bachelor's degree in history and engineering at Harvard. She was now in the arduous process of convincing their father that a doctoral degree in the same subject was worth her time, and Higgs reckoned Horace would cave soon. Lena had 2 degrees in computer science and ostensibly worked for her father's fintech company. Higgs didn't think he'd ever seen her in the company of a computer, tablet, or smart device of any kind. Karine, the youngest, was only just starting her undergraduate studies. Eike was on the cusp of a literature degree, and Edgar seemed liable to allow them to continue their academic career if they wished. Compared to his sister, Higgs found academic study a hardship that he was determined to conquer, even if it took him twice as long to do it. Between leaves of absence due to health issues, and now due to adventure, obligations to his father and his family, and the limiting capacity of his day-to-day energy levels and chronic pain, Higgs had taken his physics degree more slowly than most of his peers, and was about halfway through. He should be coming up with a topic for his undergraduate dissertation. Instead, here he was, nearly crashing onto the deck of an airship bound for lost lands that might not even exist. But the bitterness ebbed, falling away like the glittering surface of the Pacific racing by far below. Higgs didn't reply to Lena, just turned to the sky to chase that damning sense of déjà vu from his head. It was difficult to keep his worries top of mind when the fresh, cold wind wrapped around him, his stomach danced with the decks dipping and rolling, and the crew's call and response about rigging and sails and engines pinged back and forth, punctuated by the creaking of Bannockburn's trusty, storied deck. Around him, white tufts of clouds dotted the blue landscape, the sky and the ocean one with each other as the ship carried Higgs off on his first adventure. Then Higgs felt a hand on his shoulder. Your lenses creak and groan as they attempt to settle on your next chosen hero. Clarity circles the great lighthouse lantern, sliding easily into its place. Smaller versions of the same lens flick out of Clarity's metal machinery like little monocles and chirp as they zero in on additional characteristics of our next hero. Attachment and nightmares do the same, traveling along bronze axes that crisscross the light bulb like the rings of Saturn. The lenses begin to coalesce, filtering the light to find our next hero. Fortitude swings around, coming up to kiss Clarity's ring when... Hang on. Okay, I had to give it a good old kick. The lens of Fortitude got stuck somehow. It was jiggering back and forth between two settings, skipping like a broken record. It sucked. The sound was really awful, and it turned the lantern into a strobe light for a second. A broken, mystical lighthouse is not my area of expertise. And see, this is why I knew it should have been Thatch. I bet you don't even remember why you chose me. I can assure you, it was a dumb reason. Trust me. Anyway, I oiled the mechanism so it shouldn't get stuck again. And I think all 4 lenses have settled down. We can keep going with our second here. Oh, god damn it. Twins? Tu Haiyang and Tu Haixiang didn't know who was technically older. Haixiang swore that she remembered being Jiejie, older sister, when they were kids, but then their parents had shipped her and her brother off, uprooting them from Taidong City in 1989 and sending them to Vancouver to live with their aunt. At some point during that transfer, Haixiang became Mei Mei, little sister, and Haiyang was called Gege, older brother. In the end, though, that mattered little. Both siblings sought to assimilate as quickly as possible into Canadian teen life, and thus did not concern themselves with Chinese kinship terms. They became saddled with names that were easier for their classmates to pronounce, Kelvin and Arden, and regularly evaded their aunt's attempts to instill any fluency with Mandarin. That, very likely, would have been the most interesting thing to happen to them, had it not been for the pocket watch and the paper boat. Going off to university was the first time Kelvin and Arden had lived apart. Kelvin found himself in faraway Manchester, looking for an excuse to spend his university years traveling around Europe. Arden, the more studious of the two, wound up closer to home at UBC and made a point of regularly visiting her aunt on the weekends. One such weekend, Arden went home to find her aunt tied to a chair, a knife at her throat, and an origami paper boat sitting placidly in her lap. The paper boat contained instructions. You don't know that whole story, not yet. But you know that Arden and Kelvin took a leave of absence from school, and when they returned, something very dear to you was no longer in its proper place. Your pocket watch, now stolen, passed from the twins to Kelvin's friends at university, Priya and Thatch. Death's inescapable scythe followed in its wake. Thankful to be rid of the artifact and seeking to evade the arrival of any future origami paper boats, the twins decided to change their names, reclaiming their original Chinese given names and anglicizing their surname in an attempt to evade whatever dark corner of their past still had them in its clutches. They transferred schools and returned to finish their degrees together at UC Davis as Haiyang and Haixiang tied. Now, 2 decades since that inauspicious paper boat, Haiyang was a noted professor of linguistics and archaeology at the Université de Montréal, with a focus on ancient languages and writing systems. Haixiang was a professor of ecology and conservation science at McGill. Both siblings, perhaps out of a sense of duty to right past wrongs, had taken to activism in their spare time, advocating for endangered Indigenous languages, plants, and animals across Canada. When their universities agreed to invest in the Bannockburn's latest voyage, the twins had, seemingly by chance, been independently chosen to represent their institutions. Both had leapt at the chance to find a new adventure that would define their lives. Excuse me, would you mind taking a photo of the two of us? I want to send one to our aunt before we lose cell service. Haixiang eyed the two 20-somethings as her brother tapped on the young man's shoulder. The young woman was sharp in every aspect, from sharp elbows and sharp nails to a sharp look she sent the twins' way as they approached. The young man looked more unsteady, a leather satchel over one shoulder, white button-down a little rumpled where it was tucked into tailored khakis, one hand shakily running through waves of close-cropped golden-brown curls like a desert at dusk. He reminded her of a younger Haiyang, actually, who dressed in rumpled professor chic. But the look that young man was giving her, as though he'd seen a ghost. Haiyang's hand darted back from the starchy white material of this youngster's shirt, and Haixiang's fingers twitched in sympathy. "Oh, static shock," Haiyang muttered with a light laugh. "Sorry about that." "Hopefully it's not a storm brewing," Haixiang replied. She held out a hand. "Sorry to startle you, I'm Haixiang Tide." The young woman stretched out her hand. "Lena Spitz." They shook hands. "Haiyang," her brother said, and reached out to shake. "Lena," Lena repeated politely. "And this is Higgs." Higgs nodded, then tapped on his tablet. "Higgs Worthsome," he said. His brow furrowed, and he tapped a few more times against the screen, then turned it around to the twins. He'd pulled up a Chinese keyboard. "Oh?" Haixiang replied, unsure what was being asked of her. Higgs sent a flurry of quick signs towards Lena, and she nodded. Haixiang carefully avoided eye contact with her twin brother, but resolved to ask him about that later. "You can put your name in to save it as a preset word. That way he'll always be able to get your name right," Lena translated. "Neato!" Haiyang exclaimed and eagerly leaned forward. He typed in the pinyin for Haiyang, then hesitated over his surname. "First names are just fine," he decided, playing it off as his inherent affable nature and not a matter of safety. Haixiang did the same, typing the characters Haixiang. Higgs turned the tablet back around. "Haixiang," he said, and pointed at her. "Haiyang," he continued, and pointed at her brother. "You have it easy," Lena sighed jealously. "I'll have to practice to make sure I get it right." She eyed the twins, perhaps waiting for them to acquiesce and offer an easier name to pronounce. "You'll get there," Haiyang replied encouragingly, his old English name, Kelvin, caught in the back of his throat. "We have the whole voyage together, after all." "So, a photo?" Haixiang asked again, with a smile. "Of course," Lena replied. She took Haixiang's phone, and the twins gathered together against the starboard side rigging, blue sky at their backs. They grinned at the camera, and each held up a 2-finger peace sign. "Say cheese," Higgs said. "Cheese," the twins cheered with a laugh. Lena snapped a few pictures, then handed the phone back to Haixiang. "These are perfect," she said, showing the images to Haiyang. "This one, do you think?" "Yes, I think that'll put Auntie's mind at ease." The photo sent just in time for Haixiang's phone to lose its final bar of service. At the helm, Captain Vovk called out, "All right, landlubbers, looks like we're at just about cruising altitude. Welcome to your first day aboard the Bannockburn." Haiyang was delighted to meet such interesting young people aboard the Bannockburn. While his sister fluttered across the crowded deck, he spent most of his time getting to know Higgs and Lena. Lena was well versed in the latest advancements in algorithmic language decipherment, but she seemed distracted, as though always searching for the nearest exit. When she finally made her polite escape from the conversation, Haiyang found himself standing alone with Higgs. "Physics, huh?" Higgs nodded. "I like the particles." Haiyang laughed. "Linguistics has those too." "I'm supposed to be figuring out a thesis topic," Higgs confided, the longest sentence Haiyang had managed to get out of him. He could feel himself transforming into Professor Tide. "Tell me more about that," Haiyang said, resting his elbows on the starboard railing. The sun was high overhead, her light dancing across the deck and the scaly surface of the balloon. Haiyang admired the view as he waited patiently for Higgs to type out his response. "I feel like there's something to the way the particles interact, like music," Higgs began. The young man paused as though expecting to be interrupted, but Haiyang just waited for the end of the thought. "String theory explains some of this, but..." Higgs stopped, deleted what he was about to say, and then resumed. I think current theories are missing some key component. I just don't know what it is. Hayoung allowed a moment in case Higgs wasn't finished, and then replied, "Well, if you already knew what it was, it wouldn't be much of a research question, would it?" Higgs gave an endearing huff, like a half-laugh, and Hayoung found himself immediately enamored with the young scholar. "It's like that when I'm working on a new language or a new text," Hayoung explained. "I work through a passage trying to elucidate its meaning, and the feeling builds and builds that I'm missing something. Then I find it, a word or grammatical form, and it's like the whole passage clicks into place. Then I can hear it. I can hear what the author was trying to tell me 1,000 or 2,000 or however many years ago." Higgs's eyes shone, indeterminate green-blue like the changing colors of the sea below. He nodded avidly. "I want that," he said quickly. "That's what I want to do." "You'll get it," Hayoung replied, grinning. He'd seen so many of his students experience the same moment, light bulbs flicking on behind their eyes. "You seem like a patient fellow. You'll get there." Hayoung turned his eyes towards the sky's light. "Maybe you'll even figure it out on this voyage. Sometimes you need to be in a new environment, away from the pressures of your daily life." This resonated with Higgs, and he sidled up next to Hayoung to gaze into the sky together. The Bannockburn shifted, and Higgs stood a little straighter as the deck dipped beneath their feet. "Hayoung!" Haisiang appeared at his shoulder. "Higgs! That young woman over there is a musician. She's going to play for us." Higgs and Hayoung were drawn back into the crowd on the deck. With passengers and crew all on deck, Hayoung found himself squeezing between two young women gazing into the sky with binoculars, ducking under a crew member flying along the rigging, and apologizing awkwardly as he knocked knees with an older gentleman reclined against 3 wooden crates of supplies. Wind whipped through Haisiang's hair and caught at her red flannel. She also dressed in rumpled professor chic, and the wooden deck was sticky against the soles of Hayoung's white sneakers. They made their way towards a small group gathering around a young Kazakh woman with a guitar. She smiled, strummed a few experimental chords, and then began to play. The sun continued her never-ending journey, slowly dipping into their headwind, guiding them west. At one point, the older fellow by the crates disappeared, returning with bowls of a spicy, hearty stew. Captain Vovk left the helm long enough to pop the inaugural champagne, and Ayman, the young musician, accepted a glass between a Kazakh folk song and, upon request, a tango that left all but 2 dancers tripping over their feet. Hayoung even managed to coax Higgs onto the dance floor, though when the Bannockburn caught an updraft, he complained of his knees and accepted a seat and a bowl of stew instead. Night fell, and the deck emptied as passengers meandered, bubbly and joyful, to be rocked to sleep in their cabins. Hayoung and Haisiang woke early, both still on the East Coast time zone. This meant that they were the first to crawl back out onto the deck, or rather, second. Captain Vovk had returned bright and early to the helm after a short night's rest. The twins were just greeting their esteemed captain when the helm spun in its fixture and the airship listed to the side abruptly, sending the Tide siblings crashing to the deck. "Secure positions!" Captain Vovk called out. "Passengers, return to your cabins." Marielda's white hair glowed in the morning light, and their eyes shone. "Quick now," Haisiang hissed, "back down the ladder." She scrambled to her feet and pulled Hayoung up behind her. Her brother placed a foot on the top rung of the ladder, and then Captain Vovk let out a whooping, resounding cheer. "Yes! Yes!" they intoned from the helm as the airship wobbled in space. "I think we've done it!" And then, there was light. Has this happened before? Twins? It must have. And they both knew Thatch. I have to see if it's happened before. I'll check our previous story, but I might also take a peek even a little further back, maybe in Cycle 97. You can help me. I'm not even sure where to start. With whom, in Cycle 97, would you like to start? Please visit the Patreon to vote. Cycle 99 is written, created, and produced by Hannah Semmelhack. The theme song is The Boy and the Kite by Solitude. Hayoung and Haisiang Tide were designed by you. To vote on end-of-chapter and character creation polls for free, visit patreon.com/pitchpineproductions. If you want to chat with me or with other fans, join our Discord, link in the description. Thank you to my lovely beta readers Fiona, Aaron, and Paige, and to Basil, official lore keeper. Special thanks to Seraph and CK. And thank you for reading, listening, and voting. May fate's 4 winds carry you back to our skies again soon.